Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by candidate Pete D'Alessandro. He is running in Iowa, District 3, and he is actually one of the few people who has been personally endorsed by Bernie Sanders. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Pete. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you for taking the time to do this, Troy.
Absolutely. So you have quite an interesting history. You've been quite busy. Over the past 30 years, you have been working with campaigns and public service. So can you kind of touch on that a little bit, like what areas
Sure.
you've worked in?
I've been an organizer and operative for the better part of the last 25, 30 years. I consider myself a lucky guy. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do, and I was able to do it at a level that when I first started doing it, I would have only hoped I could get to that point at someday. For the last 25 years, 20 of them in Iowa, based in Iowa. I've worked on progressive candidates, campaigns, issue stuff, everything from petition drives all the way up to presidential elections. I've worked on a lot of tough races. We kind of got using that royal we that politicians fall into sometimes. Kind of got the reputation of being the guy that the underdog could call and work for. Kind of how I was geared. That's how I'm driven anyway. In that time, I've worked for a couple governors, a bunch of senators. I've worked for guys like Paul Wellstone, Tom Harkin, where you're learning not just about progressive values, but how to win as progressives and how to stand for things in a way that doesn't nuance issues. And that's one of the things we're talking about in my campaign. And then, of course, the most recent incarnation, which is right over your shoulder, is I had the great honor of being Bernie Sanders' state. And then from there, I actually worked in 6 other states for Senator Sanders, including the state director in both Oklahoma and Indiana, working with incredible volunteers where we won in 2 places that the experts said that we couldn't even compete in. And then went on to be the national delegate director at the end of the campaign. Very when you do something like the type of job that I do, you kind of hope that you're going to get that campaign that eventually, and that's what this campaign, the Bernie Sanders campaign was. It was I always tell people it was 16 months of the most joyful but also purposeful endeavor that you could hope for, and it really was, and it was I feel blessed that I was able to be part of it.
Absolutely. So when I found out that you actually were the delegate director at the DNC, that kind of intrigued me because, well, I was outside. I was one of the people protesting for 6 days.
Sure.
But seeing the way that Hillary's people treated us, seeing the way how, the delegates were coming out to join us in tears, just heartbroken because of the way they were being treated and everything. I'm curious, what made you decide to run Democrat? Just seeing everything that we've been going through.
Well, there's a couple reasons for that. I am a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat in the sense that I think more often than not that's the party that has that I shared values with. I'm a what's the term, blue dog or yellow dog? A yellow dog is actually the word. Yellow dog Democrat, that I'll vote for every Democrat that's on the ballot. I don't mean it that way at all. But the one thing I want to be clear about, and I think your point is well taken. So this is not a pushback on what people were going through then. I was on the floor that whole week. I know how tough it was. I really do. But we've got to focus. And we've got to focus not only on 2018, but 2020. And as tough as it was, and as we made, and as long as that fight went, and it went a lot longer than people thought it was gonna, we have to start really focusing on 2018, how we're going to nominate and then elect progressives throughout this country. I think this is our year to do that. and then get ready for 2020 to make sure that that we're ready in 2020 to not only build on this year's successes, because I think we can have them if we do have a bold progressive agenda, but to build on 2020 so that we can actually start expanding that agenda so that we can start governing and start doing the things that we know we need to do for this country. So 2016 was what it was. Like I said, it was 16 months of joyful and purposeful for me. Very tough last week. But, you know, I just think that we have to really focus on what the issue at hand is. And that's bringing people together, bringing progressives together, reaching out and taking both wings. You're right, I am a Democrat, taking both wings of this party and not compromising on our values, but saying that we need both wings to fly, and we're going to bring this thing together, and we're going to fly, but we're going to talk about the reason we're going to be able to fly and the reason we're going to be able to win is because it's going to be the progressive values that we're talking about that do it for us. And that's what I'm talking about in the district. It's a district that I think is truly a take-back district that I'm running in, but I don't think it's worth taking back unless we're talking about the right things. And I don't think we can take it back unless we're talking about the right issues. Medicare for all, where if you're working 40 hours a week, you should be making a decent living. And when I say decent living, I define it. That's $15 an hour where the debate starts. If you do everything you're supposed to, work as hard as you can, you shouldn't be denied the ability to go to college. And if you do have the chance to go to college, you shouldn't be buried in debt because of what you want to study. And obviously, there's a lot more issues. We have to talk about how we've abdicated our role in terms of the climate crisis in this world. That's what we've abdicated our role as a leader over the course of the last a few years. Of issues that I think are going to make progressives successful, but also are going to make the Democratic Party successful when we push those issues and when we have primaries and the choice becomes there is a progressive in the race. I think the progressive is going to win in these primaries throughout this country, not just in Iowa. And then I think we're going to win in the fall. We can't keep doing what we've been doing, though. We can't keep doing the cookie cutter candidates that try to run by not offending anyone saying anything. We've tried that. We've lost over 1,000 legislative seats in the last 5 or 6 cycles. We used to control the Senate. We don't anymore. We used to control the House. We used to have the White House. I think that's part and parcel to not standing for a progressive agenda. I think when we do that, we'll win, and then we'll be able to govern the way that we know that we should.
I absolutely hope so. Do remind me, is your state open or closed for primary?
Iowa is you have to register as a Democrat, but you can register or a Republican. But we have same day registration.
Right.
So you could, like at our caucuses, independents can come and you just have, since we have same day registration, you can re-register that day. You know, you can re-register right up to election day. So it has all the same things as being a open registration, but right. You do have to declare. That's the thing. You do have to declare.
Yeah, we were so close in the primaries. Iowa was so close. It was. When we started, imagine when we started, I got hired by Bernie Sanders in May of 2015. We were 56 points down in the polls. We were behind Martin O'Malley when we started. And this thing was built. One of my and it's a little different now that I'm a candidate, but when as an operative, as someone who runs campaigns, one of my find the best people you can find and then get out of their way and let them do their work. And that's why we were so successful in Iowa, Oklahoma, and Indiana. Is everywhere we went, there were people waiting for us, and it was the most amazing thing. And this incredible group of self-organized Americans that were waiting for this campaign to happen, and then they, by their will, by their force, kept it going when a lot of other folks thought it wasn't going to happen. And so it was certainly a campaign that, and I feel proud to say this, it was a campaign that
the people, the volunteers, the activists that were part of it actually were way ahead of us. And what we did, at least in the parts of that I was fortunate to run, is we got to those places and we said, you're ahead of us. Tell us what we need to do. How can we facilitate this? How can we win? And, Bernie Sanders, in a very good way, changed a lot of the rules. You don't have to say, I got to take this corporate money even though I'm against it. I got to take PAC money even though I'm against it. How many years have we heard politicians say that? I want to change the rules, but I got to play by them. I can't put one hand behind my back if I'm in a fight. Well, Bernie Sanders changed those rules. He said, well, if you're going to stand for it, stand for it. And then he was able to, because of the amount of people on the ground, have organizations everywhere, but also prove that if you get some of the right breaks and you do things the right way, you can raise the money that's needed to run a significant campaign also. And I think that's one of the great things about the campaign that happened. It really is.
Absolutely. I've now interviewed over 50 candidates from all across the country, and every single one has said that they do not take any PAC money or anything like that, and that's because of Bernie. So that's pretty huge.
Proved you can do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you're going to see more and more of that around the country. You're going to see more and more of that around the country. People are going to realize we have over. I'm proud of this in the sense that it shows that we could gut it out and do the type of campaign we want to do. We have over 7,000 donors to my campaign. I'm running in the middle of America for a take-back seat, and people are very aware that we're all interconnected on this stuff now. That we have to win, and I win seats in Pennsylvania. That I might live in Iowa, but it matters to me if we win a race in other places. So we've been able to really build a pretty good grassroots movement, and do it with a lot of small donations. I'm certainly not Bernie Sanders, but we're following that same model, and we think it's worth fighting the fight that way.
Hell yes. I was looking I like to Google my guests too, just to see if I can find any dirt. I didn't find
I'm not the basketball coach or the comedian, so.
I found this article on Des Moines Register, and it says there's 6 Dems in your district, and the quote was, they agree on the issues but offer contrasts on experiences and approach. Do you think you guys do agree on the issues?
There.
Do you think that you agree? Do you agree on the issues with the people you're competing against in the district?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you're looking at it from a news reporter's view, we're all in the same area. We're all in the same ballpark on the issues. I don't know. I can't speak for the other candidates. I don't know if they will, in a general election, put first and foremost right on the top of their literature, right in their commercials, as they're going door to door, that they're for Medicare for all. I can only speak for myself. I'm for Medicare for all. I don't know if they'll be as specific to say, we debate at $15 an hour when we talk about the minimum wage in this country. I don't know if they're specific about that. I don't know if they're specific about what we're talking about is free secondary education for anyone who earns it. So I think a lot of times when a news reporter is looking at it, they're saying, well, they agree on the general idea of the minimum wage should go up. They agree that we should cover everybody in healthcare. They agree that we should make college more affordable. All these 30 poll-tested kind of sentences where you don't have to say anything necessarily. I'm not speaking for the other candidates, but that's where I actually stand on those issues. And so I would leave it to the other candidates to say if they stand in the same place. But I know where I stand on it, and then it's pretty clear. And I know the reasons.
Yeah, I very quickly kind of glanced, and they came across very centrist. That's only my opinion. You definitely came across as the most progressive because it is kind of that semantics thing. Well, healthcare for all. Okay. Is it going to be affordable? Is it going, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. And I'll be honest, that's one of the things that, and I'm not saying any of my opponents necessarily do this, but throughout this country, and when you're doing this show, I think vehicles that you provide are so important, especially in the way that our politics is now, because you can reach people by just cutting through all the corporate media stuff, and you can talk to whoever you're talking to, and allow me to talk to them and other people to talk to them directly, almost basically. But one of the things I get to is one of the things I ask respectfully is a Democrat especially say, yeah, I believe we should cover everyone. And if I get elected, I'm going to work towards that end. I really think the next question has to be how. Because you know what? Mitch McConnell says, I think we should cover everybody. That's not a good enough answer. And I think it's a Medicare for all system. Look, Medicare is arguably, and I believe this, is the single greatest social program in the history of the world. We're literally on the second generation of seniors right now who are living in dignity because this country, actually the Democratic Party back then, but this country had the will and the strength, and I'll use strength in that way, to say we're going to do this. We're going to make sure that you don't have to live in fear in your older years, and that we're good enough and we're big enough to do it. I think it is. People think it is. I'm basically saying, let's take this incredibly successful program that has already provided so many of our fellow citizens the dignity that they deserve, and let's expand it so that we guarantee that all of our citizens can live in that same dignity. That's really what this is about. So I don't think it's as radical idea as some folks think it is, and that's why I'm willing to go out there and talk about it in that way. And I think if we do talk about it in that way, we're going to find supporters and support in places that the pundits and the pollsters haven't even figured out are there. Because that's one thing we saw in the Bernie Sanders campaign throughout the country is we were winning places that you weren't even supposed to be. The reason we were is because we were talking about these issues in a strong, clear way. People know there's a problem, but people know that we've solved them in the past and that we can do it again with this. So that's what I mean by when I say Medicare for all and why I think it'll work. $15 an hour is another, I think, clear example of what we're talking about. There is not a state in this union, not one state, that if you make less than $15 an hour, you can afford a one-bedroom, a two-bedroom apartment in a part of town where who gets two-bedroom apartments? Young couples that are just starting out. Maybe they're in a community that they're not quite at a point where they can buy a house yet, but they want to stay in a community, in a neighborhood that they've grown up in, that they're connected to. Single parents trying to work so that they can provide their children with a decent lifestyle. So to me, if those are the folks that can't afford a simple two-bedroom apartment because they're not making enough money, and if it starts at $15 an hour, to me that's the bare minimum. That's the start of the debate. So to say wage, if you don't say $15 an hour, you're leaving out everybody between where they are now and $15 in the debate that you're going to help. Well, I just don't think that's progressive. I think with that knowledge that the debate starts at 15, it's going to go higher. It has to, but we cannot relent on this one. We have to say, because of this situation of what should be the ability to live in dignity if you're working hard, we're not gonna start the debate less than that. And now let's have this conversation and let's make it happen. But I think that's the difference on a lot of these things.
A lot of us worry that once they would even consider the 15, by then it should be 20, or what have you. So definitely the sooner the better, for sure.
Absolutely. And again, I think the way we have to keep wording it and what we have to fight for is the idea that $15 an hour is where we're starting this conversation. We're not going to like $15 an hour. We're starting it there. That's what we're going to get to. And then you're right. Then we index it, and then we make sure that folks get the raises that they deserve and need as inflation goes up and as situations change in the country. Working people have gone far too long without a minimum wage increase in this country. And here's the other thing about it is, one thing that the studies show and that we can just look at through history, whenever we raise the minimum wage, everyone else's wages go up too. It isn't like the person that's at other minimum wage all of a sudden is knocked down. We know that it brings everybody else's wages up eventually, because working people, when they have money in their pockets, spend it. So if you give people every day more money for their toil, they're going to go out and spend that money, which means places where they spend it are going to need more people to hire to work also, and it's a very positive cycle that we need to get to, and we need to make it, like I said, $15 an hour.
Absolutely. To me, it seems so obvious, but not to everyone apparently.
Nope.
Someone actually posted on the event page that Tulsi came to meet with you a few months ago.
Oh, Tulsi Gabbard obviously was someone I got to great honor of meeting on the campaign. She was an amazing supporter of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and she was coming into Iowa to do some stuff for some other folks. So I thought it was a good time to. I had nothing to do with my campaign or anything other than that. This was just a thank you to a great help to us, and we just put a little event together for her of people that had been very active on the campaign in Iowa. You know, she hadn't been, she wasn't engaged into the campaign but until after Iowa. So a lot of the Iowa activists who really like her and respect her, she wasn't one of the folks that came through. So we thought it was a nice little thing to do, to let her meet some of those folks and to let them meet her. And it was a lot of energy, a lot of very positive in the room. She's very well thought of, and is just a really good lady.
Yeah, one of the Daniel Clark. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was.
I know Daniel. We disagree on a few things, but Daniel's a good man.
Yeah, he was. His dream was to meet her, and he finally got to. So he was very
excited. Yeah, Daniel's a good man.
He is. The reason I brought that up is because the gentleman who posted in the event also wanted to know how you feel about Tulsi's new proposal with the fossil fuels.
Yeah, I think we have to start moving in that direction. I think this is one of those bold, progressive ideas we're talking about, whereas conservatives do this all the time. So let's say that we're going to get away from the rancor of politics and say, I may disagree with a conservative's views, but I'm not going to reflex to, well, they must be bad people. Well, let me reflex to, they're wrong, and I'm going to try to. I just think we should do things a different way. But one of the things conservatives do as a strategy is they say, we're for this, and this is where we're going to debate things. So Tulsi's thing, I haven't looked at it really deeply, but the is exactly that same strategy as the $15 an hour strategy. It's saying this is what we should be doing. So we're going to start the discussion here, which means any debate about it or any compromise about it is being started at the point of where I think we should be. And that's what I like about how she's addressing this. And I think and I don't want to conflate issues that aren't necessarily the same, but I believe Senator Sanders has a bill similar to this in the Senate too, the not one drop more bill, I think, where basically it's saying we're going to stop all these things because we're not going to create the need for them anymore. So they're going to that, and if I understand it correctly, and I haven't looked at it real closely, I think that's what Tulsi's bill is saying. Also, and educate me if I'm missing it, but I think that's what she's saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you also touched on
strategy.
Absolutely. You also put global climate crisis on your platform. Do you want to kind of discuss a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a believer in that when we do it correctly, and when we chase our better angels, we can actually do great things as Americans, and we can do them in a way that not only helps other Americans, but we could do them to help folks throughout the world. And I just think that we've abdicated our leadership on this role right now. We're about to name a climate denier secretary. It's the single greatest issue facing the world, and we're going to have a climate denier, a climate change denier, as a Secretary of State, as the person who's going around the world advocating for what needs to happen between countries. That's insane. I think that alone makes him not qualified to be Secretary of State, to be honest. I know congressmen don't have a vote on that, but I do have a bully pulpit because I'm running. So I think that alone would make him someone that should be voted against. We just have to assert issues, and you know what? The rest of the world does listen, and because of who we are, and because of our being such a consumer nation, we can change the way other countries have to do things if we change the way we do things. But the first thing we have to do, it's basic, but the first thing we have to do is have a government that trusts the science. And I'm not, let me be clear about this, I'm not new to the issue. I'm a believer in that, you should read as much as you can and learn, and that's what science is. And I'm much more, let me put it this way, I'm much more concerned about it than I was if you asked me the same question 10 years ago. I'm a different person on the issue than I was 10 years ago because I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to want to keep learning and to maybe challenge your own views on things every now and then and see if you can expand the way you look at things. But every scientist you talk to, something that we some of them are actually saying we're getting close to the point where we might not be able to ease it and stop it and turn it around. That's real scary. But most scientists you talk to a person say that it's a man-made problem, and if it's a man-made problem, that means there can be man-made solutions to it. And I just think that's how we have to view it. That's how our government has to view it, and that's how we have to keep viewing it as to address the issue.
So you don't think it was a hoax created by the Chinese?
No, and again, I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago, but I didn't think that 10 years ago. I wasn't quite that bad. But it was not a hoax. And I always forget whether they're our friends or not anymore with this guy as president. Our friends seem to change from day to day, and his friends seem to change depending on which Twitter war he's in the morning.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily the best way to run a government.
Not so much.
No, it hasn't worked very well.
Right. You also touched on a bit of tuition-free college. Do you want to kind of expand on that?
Yeah, here's the thing about that one is I think this is a value issue. And I think that one of the things we've kind of gotten away from as progressives and certainly as Democrats in the last few years is to shape these important issues and put it out there and say this is about a value. This is want to be. And to me, if a kid works hard, does what they're supposed to do, whether you want to say gets the good grades, does the proper stuff in the community, the bottom line is you shouldn't be denied going to a public institution because your parents didn't make enough money, or because you don't want to go into debt for the rest of your life because you might want to study something that brings you joy and that you might be able to bring joy and is needed for other people, but it's the type of vocation that doesn't necessarily that well. So you don't want to be buried in debt. So you don't study sociology, you don't study something else that you really want to, because you realize, well, I'll be in debt because I have to take out so many loans for it. And I want to be clear about this. This isn't just about college and universities. I think this plan has to be expanded so that we're talking about 2-year colleges. We're talking about apprenticeship programs. We're talking about trade schools. We're talking about giving people the opportunity to do to school, to learn about and to become better at what they want to do moving forward. It's better for all of us. My old boss, Paul Wellstone, used to have a thing he used to say where, we all do better when we all do better. And so, yeah, it is about that individual person. I get that. We're helping another citizen. It's about that person. But it really is about all of us because we're creating better citizens. We're creating people, and we're creating people. We'll be creating a society in which people can reach their full potential. And I just can't see an argument against that. And the best part about this particular plan is if you look at even some of the tax cuts, you look at some of the stuff we're spending on weaponry that the Defense Department is asking us not. The Congress consistently for the last 10 or 12 years, maybe even longer actually, but from what a report I just looked at, has taken defense. The Defense Department has given here's what we want: A, B, C, and D. We don't want E anymore. We don't need it, and we're still funding some of those things that our own Defense Department is asking not to fund. So people always talk about, well, where are you going to find the money for these things? Where are you going to find the money for college for everyone? Where are you going to find the money for Medicare? I think there's two answers to that. There's a 30,000-foot answer. It's pretty obvious to most of us, and I think pretty ridiculous. Want to go to war? We don't ask that question first. We just say, well, we got to go into Iraq. We've got to go into Afghanistan. We'll worry about the wallet later because this is so important. And boy, we sure always seem to be able to find plenty of money or plenty of reason to go into debt for those type of things. And yet now we're talking about how we're going to educate our next generation to the point where they can reach their full potential. And that's when we're going to draw that line and say, oh, money's the most important thing. How are we going to do it? And do it. It would take a tax on Wall Street speculation trades, which I've talked to people that do that. It wouldn't stop one trade from going through. So you wouldn't be affecting that particular market at all. People would still do it. And you'd be able to fund this program just with that piece being your funding mechanism, let alone the things I just talked about. Hey, what if we don't have that bomber they don't want, or that extra aircraft carrier that they asked not to have? So there's plenty of ways to do this. We just have to find the will, because we always seem to find a wallet for a lot of these other things that I don't think make us any stronger than ideas that will make our next generation be able to reach their full potential.
I met Stephanie Kelton. Have you met her?
I don't think so, but I hate to say, maybe I'm
Bernie's economic advisor.
No, probably not. I'm a campaign guy, so I might have met her, but I put up yard signs and that kind of thing, and work with the volunteers and love it. But they on that particular campaign, I wasn't part of that piece of it. I might have met her, but I'm sure she doesn't remember me either. If we did,
he actually teaches economics, something called MMT, which is modern monetary theory, which is something we always promote on here as well. So federal taxes don't fund spending. So they have the means. The government has the means. Yet they basically, perpetuate the thought that they don't, to let us think that we can't do certain things we have the ability to do. Essentially, right. They have the means to do literally every single thing we are asking. College, Medicare for all, everything like that. They have those means. They just, constantly talk about debt.
Right. Well, you know how you know that's true, and I'm not as smart as obviously as the person who came up with that. But you know how you know that's true? Almost every other free country in the world has done it. So they've
Exactly.
been able to do it. We're not. This isn't a Harvard think tank, coming up with ideas, sitting in a room. We have the blueprint from other nations that have done it, and other nations that we've historically called our allies. So the blueprint is that, and it just seems well. Look, there's another problem here when it comes to whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's college tuition, the tragedies of the last month, whether it's whether or not we're going to address the situation with guns in this country. Look, we know now that most people think we should have a Medicare for all system. The polls are showing that. We know that when it comes to guns, I've been quoting these lately. 90% of Americans think we should ban assault weapons. 80% of Americans think we should close the gun show. Over 80% should close the gun show loophole. Over 80% think we should make it tougher for our fellow citizens who are suffering with mental illness to be able to purchase a weapon. Yet it doesn't even get a serious discussion in the United States Congress. There is not even a serious discussion because the NRA owns so many legislators. We don't have a serious. We have one now because of quite simply the will of Bernie Sanders, who has been doing it for decades now. We are about to have that serious discussion about Medicare for all, which should have happened years ago. Why haven't we had it? Big Pharma owns too many legislators on both sides of the aisle. So it all circles back to another issue. There are more of us than them. We know that in great numbers we support these things, but yet we can't get to them. We have reform in this country. We simply cannot maintain a system in which the richest people have more of a say than the majority of the people. And I think that the start to that is overturning Citizens United. I would obviously support that as a congressman. Hopefully, we can get a situation where we can put a couple of proper Supreme Court justices and get it done that way. But I just think we have to move towards a system, form this really broken system. It's really a corrupt system of campaign finance. It's a rigged system in the sense that 80% of the people can believe something, but it doesn't even get a discussion in the United States Congress. That to me is the definition. That's the poster child of what a rigged system is. I'm not saying that you should win every battle, or that you're always going to be able to win these debates. But when 90% of the people are saying something and you can't even discuss it, that to me is pretty clearly a broken system, a rigged system, and we need to change it.
Absolutely. I interviewed Congressman Ro Khanna, and he came up with legislation that stated that basically, I will not take any PAC money, blah, blah, blah. And he gave it to everyone in Congress, and he's one of 6 who signed it. That's it.
No, isn't that amazing? Yeah. I mean, there's always a reason not to. But the point is, we're not going to change this system until we start finding the reasons to do it. So Ro deserves a lot of credit for that and standing out in front on that. And you know what? It'll happen. I mean, we've got to keep fighting these fights. We've got to keep standing shoulder to shoulder on these battles. 10 years ago, there was I think I don't even think he had a co-sponsor when the Medicare put into the Congress. And now I think, what is it? I think it's up to 19. It might even be more. 25 of the Democratic senators are.
I think it is 19. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So 0 to 19 in the House, it went from 0 to 123, I believe now. We just got to keep fighting these fights. We can't get discouraged. Look, these big money interests don't go down without a fight, and so they know they have to keep spending to do it, and they're going to keep spending to do it. But we can't let that discourage us, and we've got to keep looking at it that way. We went from 0 to 123. Now we're going to get to that next number, and then we're going to get to 215. We're going to get to 216. We're going to get this Medicare for all to be the law of the land at some point. It's the right thing to do. First of all, one of the things about Medicare for all is I think the irony of it is I think it's going to be big business that eventually comes and says this isn't a sustainable situation. We can't. We're spending too much on the health care of our workers, and we're not spending enough on what we're supposed to do. And so I think that's the irony of the whole thing is that they're starting to realize that the system as it is now is not tenable. GM. I read somewhere that GM spent more money last year on health care for their employees than basically a healthcare provider that makes things. Look, I'm not an economist, but it seems pretty obvious that's not sustainable. And the answer is in this case Medicare for all. But I got off on a tangent there. I know we were talking about something else, but I think it's the issue of our time, and I think it's how we're going to be judged. 100 years from now, 120 years looking back, and they're writing about our time. They're not going to say, well, these 26 congressmen didn't do it the right way, and these rich guys had. They're going to be talking about the American society. We're all going to be written as one, whether we did this or not. I happen to think we're going to do it. I happen to think we're good enough to do it. I happen to think there's enough will and enough ability out there to get it done. But that's what they're going to write about. They're not going to pinpoint it. They're going to say this is what American society in the first part of the 21st century, and what they're going to write about is whether or not we took the next step to let more of our citizens live in dignity, or whether or not we just let the opportunity pass. I tend to think that we can make it happen, and they'll write a positive history about us. That's my hope.
And I digress a little, but what are your thoughts on DACA and immigration reform?
Yeah, this is another one where there are, we talked earlier about sometimes you can just disagree, and it doesn't mean the other person's a bad person. It's a different way to get to the, a heartfelt, hopefully, ending. But there are certain issues that pop up every now and then that are just going to define who you are. They're going to define who you are as a society, who you are as a nation. I just think this is one of them. These young people, some of them age now almost, that we're talking about are the best of us. I don't even like saying dreamers anymore. I just use the word Americans. They're Americans. They've grown up here. They know no other country. But not only that, they've become the best of us. They've gone to school. They've started businesses. They've become positive parts of our community. Not our community. Our meaning they are the community. They're Americans, and then so many of them have served in the military, and so for me this is one of those we've got to trust our better angels on this one, and just know that the right thing to do is shoot. I know we talk about path to citizenship, but that path should be a pretty short path. These are Americans. They're people who have made us the society better, and we should certainly be big enough to be able to say that. And to me, the path to citizenship, like I said, should be a very small path. They've earned their citizenship, if that's how you want to look at it, by being good citizens. How about that? Let's put it that way. Their path to citizenship has been earned because they've been good members of this society. If we do anything else, we're not going to be judged well by history. I just that's where I'm at with it. Absolutely. Another one I can't nuance.
Do you where you live, or even Iowa as a whole, do you have a lot of for-profit prisons?
I don't think I'm not sure if we have what we would say a lot of for profit prisons. I know there was it's I think we've done okay on that. I could. That's a good question. I guess I should look that up. But I know that there's always that move, even within the government, the public stuff to things, and I know that's been a struggle over the course of the last 8 years or so. Some privatization of what should be public stuff going on. But it's obviously a problem throughout the society. You've made me look. I will look something up tomorrow. That's why I like doing these shows. I always either get something new or, and that's really what we should be doing. Anyone that wants to be in public office should be willing to occasionally hear a few things that they haven't thought of before, and
for sure
look into it and see what we can do better.
On that note, do you support cannabis legalization?
I'm losing you.
Do you support marijuana legalization? Marijuana legalization?
Legalization of cannabis?
Yes.
You're believe it or not, this sounds like it's you have frozen up on me, so I can see you, but I can't hear you. There you go. Ask again. What was your question?
Do you support marijuana legalization?
I'm not ducking the question. I'm not ducking it. Honestly, I can't.
You guys, someone put it in the comments.
Are you saying legalizing marijuana?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Message me.
Okay.
Oh, now I can see you. Ask the question.
Yes, marijuana legalization. Do you support it?
Yes, legalize it. Yes, legalize it. It's crazy. This is another case of look. The reason cannabis isn't being legalized is big pharma doesn't want the competition. Today, it's all about this recreational stuff. It's because big pharma doesn't want the competition of a affordable an affordable painkiller, so that they can't sell as many high priced pills to people that actually need it. We know that's the reason. We need to fight through that. But yeah, it should be legal. And another one that's easy to me. Yes, it should be legal.
Absolutely.
And I know there's disagreements on it, but I mean, it's
Well, I think anyone who disagrees probably has never had to take care of someone sick. Especially because there are people who are against medical marijuana, which literally makes no sense.
We had this fight in the Iowa legislature, if you can believe that, just recently, just to get I think it was just oil legalized. And so yeah, I mean, it's again, there's a lot more people that weigh in, both on the medical side, but also on the whatever the right term is, recreational side, that say it should be legal. And we could probably fund a lot of the things, or help fund a lot of the things that we talked about with the revenue that would be created by it also. So
absolutely,
there's a little something on that side of it too.
Absolutely, there are definite studies out there that show massive increase monetarily in states who have legalized it. If you want to leave one thing with our viewers, so that they recommend you or check out your website or what have you, what do you want to leave them with?
I believe with all of my heart that if we stand for a progressive agenda, and we do it with the specifics that some of your great questions brought out today, and some of the things that if we stand for a progressive agenda, we will look, we can look at Donald Trump and say he's so unpopular that he'll get elected in the wave. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been studying it for longer. There are waves. That happens in American politics. If we depend on a wave, we're going to win an election, possibly. We need to talk about the things in which we can win the future. And that's why I talk about Medicare for all. That's why I talk about a living $15 an hour wage. That's why I talk about making sure that anyone who earns it can get to a secondary education. We have to talk about the issues that will allow us to win the future, so that if we win this election, we can actually get in there and start legislating and start governing when we do get in there. The thing I always finish with when I talk to folks, because like I said, I have studied this for a long time. And it's a great quote that we kind of made, not the center of my campaign, but it's something we always come back to because it's what we're trying to be about. Our primary in Iowa actually happens to be on the 50th anniversary of when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And Robert Kennedy used to have a quote. Robert Kennedy used to say, the future might be beyond our sight, but it's not beyond our grasp. And that we have an obligation. We're free people. We have an obligation to grab it and to mold it to our will. What I want to tell folks, whether they're about my race or about any race that in any of the states that they live in, that if we keep fighting for progressive values, a generation from now, they're going to look back at us. They might be on shows like this talking about us, and they're going to say that's when they figured it out. That's when, instead of just trying to win elections, they tried to win the future. And how about it? Because they tried to win the future, not only did they did it because they started winning elections again. I think that's what it's about. I think we can do this. We've done it before. The Democratic Party has done it before, but this country has done it before. And we can do it again. I think we're on the cusp of why I'm running. That's what I would like to leave with folks, is that these things are worth fighting for. They're worth being part of the battle, and we just need to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Do you want to give your website, Facebook, all that stuff?
Yeah, it's easy. It's Pete for Iowa is the website, and the Facebook, and it's at Pete for Iowa is the Twitter, is what they tell me that how to say that. So there it is.
I gotta tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for watching, as usual. So I have another show, as usual, Friday, 9 p.m., and then Monday, 9 p.m., and then Wednesday, the 21st, I have Levy Sanders, Bernie's son, is going to be doing his first independent media interview with me. So you guys definitely want to tune in, because I
might tune into that.
What's that?
I'm going to tune in. I'm going to tell my staff to put that on the schedule so we can watch it.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk again, okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing.
You as well. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.